Hey, silent builders. If you clicked on this today, I do not think it was random. Usually, people find a message like this when they are in the middle of a season nobody applauds. Maybe you have been working for months, maybe even years, and the people around you still look at your effort like it is a hobby. Maybe someone you trusted gave you that smile, the one that looks polite on the surface, but underneath it says, "Yeah, sure, let's see how long this lasts." Or maybe you are simply exhausted. Not exhausted from the work itself, but from explaining your vision to people who were never meant to carry it with you. If that sounds like your life right now, then stay here. This is exactly where you need to be. Nietzsche once wrote, "That which does not kill us makes us stronger." But there is an important part most people leave out. Pain does not automatically make anyone stronger. Struggle by itself does not transform you. Viktor Frankl understood that better than almost anyone. In the worst conditions imaginable, he discovered that the real turning point is not the suffering itself, but the meaning you choose to give it. Two people can walk through the exact same fire. One comes out bitter, blaming the world, replaying the pain for the rest of their life. The other comes out built, clearer, sharper, more disciplined, more dangerous in the best possible way. The difference is not luck. It is not talent. It is not even circumstance. It is the decision made inside the struggle. That is what this video is about. 6 decisions. 6 principles that people with quiet strength live by when nobody is clapping, nobody is posting about them, and nobody expects much from them. We are going to talk about what it really means to ignore the noise, what it costs emotionally to outgrow people you once loved being around, what outworking others actually looks like when the camera is off, and why winning in silence is not weakness, not hiding, not coping, but one of the smartest competitive strategies a person can adopt in this era. On Stoicism Breath, this is the kind of work that matters. Not the loud kind. Not the performative kind. The real kind. The kind that changes a person from the inside out. So if you are in that quiet season right now, take one breath and let this land. You are not behind. You are building. And the first truth you need to understand is the power of being underestimated. Most people spend a ridiculous amount of energy trying to be taken seriously before they have created anything serious. They want the title before the skill. They want the respect before the results. They want to be seen before they have become. And when someone dismisses them, doubts them, or talks to them like they are small, they treat it like a personal wound. But what if being underestimated is not an insult? What if it is leverage? Think about any truly competitive environment, business, sports, leadership, creative work. The moment people start watching you closely, they begin adjusting to you. They prepare for you. They study your patterns. They expect something from you. Attention sounds flattering, but attention is also pressure. It is surveillance. The person nobody is watching has a different advantage. They get to move in peace. They get to experiment, fail, adapt, improve, and sharpen themselves without resistance. Psychology even has a name for part of this dynamic: the underdog effect. When expectations are low, something interesting happens. Pressure drops. The fear of ruining a reputation disappears because there is no reputation yet to protect. And that freedom often produces more originality, more grit, and more hunger than environments full of expectation. The person who is not supposed to win moves lighter. They are not carrying image management. They are carrying ambition. But this is where people ruin the advantage. The second someone doubts them out loud, they feel the urge to respond immediately. To explain. To defend. To prove. to give a full presentation over dinner about why their idea makes sense, why their path is valid, why they should be believed in. That urge is human. It is also dangerous, because doubt from another person is rarely a prophecy about your future. It is usually a confession about their own limits. When someone says, "That probably won't work," most of the time what they really mean is, "I would not know how to make that work," or "I stopped when it got difficult," or "I cannot imagine a version of life bigger than the one I accepted." Their ceiling is not your ceiling. Their map is not your map. Their doubt reflects where they would stop, not where you must stop. And the moment you truly understand that, something shifts. Their doubt stops sounding like truth and starts sounding like information. Useful information. It tells you where other people gave up. It shows you the border of their imagination. But it does not define yours. That is why some of the most powerful people in the world were underestimated early. Not because they were lucky, but because they learned not to argue with disbelief. They learned to outgrow it. Quietly. Consistently. Patiently. They did not make speeches. They made progress. And progress has a way of becoming undeniable. So if you are in that season now, if people are overlooking you, doubting you, smiling at your vision in that dismissive way, do not waste your strength trying to correct their perception too early. Let them underestimate you. Let them look past you. Let them think you are still small. Because while they are busy misreading you, you get to build without pressure, improve without interference, and sharpen yourself without being watched. That is not a disadvantage. That is a hidden advantage most people are too insecure to use. And on Stoicism Breath, that is where we begin, not with applause, not with validation, but with quiet construction. Because the people who become undeniable rarely start by being believed. They start by being underestimated and using it. Once you begin to see doubt from others in this new way, something powerful happens. The sting fades. The anger softens. Instead of feeling wounded, you start feeling informed. Their doubt stops being an insult and becomes information. It shows you where they stopped trying. It reveals the exact point where their courage ran out. And most importantly, it reminds you of one truth: you do not have to stop where they stopped. Your path does not end where theirs did. History gives us powerful reminders of this pattern. Oprah Winfrey was once fired from her first television job and told she was too emotional to succeed in broadcast news. J.K. Rowling received 12 rejection letters before a single publisher finally believed in Harry Potter. Michael Jordan, one of the greatest athletes of all time, was cut from his high school varsity basketball team. Think about that for a moment. These people had every reason to argue, to complain, to defend themselves publicly. But they did not. They did not hold press conferences. They did not waste energy trying to change opinions overnight. They went quiet. They went to work. Day after day, step after step, they let discipline speak where words would have failed. And eventually, their results became impossible to ignore. Because the scoreboard always catches up to effort. Always. Maybe not today. Maybe not this month. But eventually, effort leaves evidence. On Stoicism Breath, this brings us to the second principle: ignore them. But let's be very clear about what that really means, because many people misunderstand this word. Ignoring people does not mean becoming cold or shutting down emotionally. It does not mean pretending criticism does not exist or isolating yourself from the world. True ignoring is far more intentional than that. It is the daily decision about where your attention goes. It is choosing what deserves space in your mind and what does not. Modern neuroscience has made this painfully clear. Your attention is limited. Every time your brain processes criticism, comparison, rejection, or judgment, it uses the same mental resources you need for creativity, problem solving, and growth. Your brain cannot fully focus while it is busy defending itself. It cannot build while it is busy worrying. So when someone's negative opinion about your pace, your goals, or your potential starts replaying in your mind, it is not harmless background noise. It is draining your power in real time. Think about this statistic for a moment. The average human mind produces somewhere between 50,000 and 70,000 thoughts every single day. Now imagine how many of those thoughts are spent worrying about what other people think. How many are spent replaying conversations, imagining judgment, or defending your choices in your own head? That is an enormous amount of mental energy being spent on people who are not building your life with you. People who are not putting in the work. People who are not carrying your responsibility. Ignoring them means refusing to keep paying rent in your mind to people who have done nothing to earn that space. And this is not just philosophy. It is practical psychology. Your environment shapes your thinking, whether you realize it or not. There is a well-known concept in social psychology called emotional contagion. It describes how human beings unconsciously absorb the emotions of those around them, not because they are weak, but because their brains are wired for connection. It helped our ancestors survive in tribes. But in the modern world, it can quietly sabotage your progress. Spend enough time around fear, and fear becomes normal. Spend enough time around doubt, and doubt becomes familiar. Spend enough time around people who believe nothing can change, and eventually, your own belief starts shrinking. That is why limiting exposure to negativity is not arrogance, it is hygiene. The same way, you would not stay in a smoke-filled room every day out of loyalty. You should not stay mentally surrounded by voices that weaken your confidence. So restructure your environment with intention. Quietly. Without drama. Without announcements. Unfollow social media accounts that constantly make you feel behind. Spend less time in conversations that leave you drained instead of energized. Choose spaces, people, and content that build your confidence rather than slowly erode it. Because at this early stage of building your future, belief is fragile. It has not yet been proven by results. It exists only as a feeling, a vision, a quiet certainty inside you. And that fragile belief is the seed of everything you are becoming. Protect it like your life depends on it, because in many ways it does. Spend less time in conversations that drain you instead of building you. Not with anger. Not with dramatic exits. Not with long speeches about why you are changing. Just less. Quietly, intentionally, consistently less. Because what you are protecting right now is something fragile and priceless. Your belief in yourself before the results exist. That early belief, before the evidence, before the proof, before the applause, that is the seed of everything you are trying to grow. Think about a plant just beginning to push through the soil. It is small. It looks weak. But inside that tiny stem is the blueprint for something much larger. If that plant is constantly stepped on, crowded, or starved of light, it never reaches its full form. Your belief works the same way. Before success becomes visible, belief is your only fuel. And that is why you must guard it carefully. Not with fear, but with discipline. Not with isolation, but with awareness. If you are tired of letting other people's noise take up space in your mind, take a breath and remember this simple truth: your peace is your power. And protecting your peace is not selfish. It is strategic. Now let's talk about something that almost nobody discusses honestly: outgrowing people. The loneliness nobody prepares you for. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that loss is simply another form of change, and change is part of nature itself. That sounds poetic until you live through it. Because the moment you truly commit to becoming better, not just reading about growth, not just sharing motivational quotes, but actually changing your habits, something shifts inside you. And that shift is not superficial. It does not stay on the surface. It moves into your values. Your standards change. Your tolerance for wasted time shrinks. Your conversations begin to feel different. You start noticing what energizes you and what drains you. And when that happens, something uncomfortable begins to unfold. Some relationships cannot follow you where you are going. Not because those people are bad. Not because you are better. But because growth changes your direction. And direction determines distance. This process is rarely dramatic. It does not usually explode into arguments or big emotional moments. Instead, it shows up quietly. It is the Saturday night when the group chat that once excited you now feels empty. It is sitting at the same table, hearing the same jokes, and realizing nothing has changed in years. It is laughing politely while feeling disconnected inside. It is that quiet moment when you recognize something difficult. You have been shrinking yourself just to fit into spaces you have already outgrown. And then comes the guilt. Almost everyone feels it. You start asking yourself hard questions. Am I becoming arrogant? Am I forgetting where I came from? Does wanting more mean I am disloyal to the people who supported me before? That guilt can feel heavy, but it deserves your attention, not because it is correct, but because it reveals something important. It shows that you cared. People who never cared about their relationships do not feel guilty when they move forward. The guilt is not evidence of betrayal. It is evidence of love. But here is the part nobody tells you clearly. Shrinking yourself to maintain comfort does not save relationships. It damages you. When you pretend to be smaller than you are, you become frustrated, restless, disconnected from yourself. And that version of you, the one hiding your ambition, lowering your standards, pretending not to want more, is not easier to be around. It is heavier, more resentful, more distant. The sacrifice does not produce harmony. It produces quiet frustration. Psychologist Abraham Maslow studied individuals he called self-actualizing people, people living at the highest levels of their potential. One pattern appeared again and again. These individuals became selective about their social environments. Not cold, not arrogant, not distant, just precise. They maintained deep, meaningful relationships with a small number of people and gradually let go of shallow connections that required them to stay small. Maslow did not call this isolation. He called it psychological freedom. And yes, the loneliness that comes during growth is real. It is not imaginary. It is not weakness. It is part of the transition. But here is the important truth: this loneliness is temporary. It is not your final destination. You are not losing your people forever. You are moving toward people who match the person you are becoming. The loneliness you feel right now is the distance between your old identity and your new one. It is the space between who you were and who you are building yourself to be. So walk through it. Do not run back. Do not shrink yourself to avoid discomfort. Walk through it with patience. Because on the other side of that distance, there are people who understand your pace, respect your growth, and support your standards. And when you reach that space, the loneliness that once felt heavy begins to feel like strength. And that brings us to the next principle: outworking everyone else. Not loudly, not dramatically, but consistently, quietly, and with purpose. Now let's talk about the truth about discipline. The version nobody posts online. The version that rarely looks impressive from the outside. Well, Durant once summarized Aristotle with a line that still echoes today: "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence is not a single act, it is a habit. And that idea sounds simple, but living it is where most people struggle. Because when people imagine outworking others, they picture something dramatic. They picture waking up at 4 a.m. with cinematic lighting, filming workouts, posting perfect desk sets, showing motivational quotes on a wall. But real discipline, the kind that changes lives, rarely looks cinematic. It looks quiet. It looks ordinary. Sometimes it even looks boring. Outworking someone is not the moment everyone sees. It is the 15 minutes you use wisely between responsibilities while others scroll through their phones. It is the skill you practice on a random Tuesday night when your body is tired and your mind tells you to rest, but you do it anyway. And here is the most important detail: nobody is watching. No one is tracking your effort. No one will congratulate you. That invisible moment, that private decision, is where separation begins. Because the real difference between people who rise and people who stay stuck is not talent. It is not resources. It is not even time in many cases. The difference shows up when accountability disappears. When there is no boss watching, no deadline pressing, no audience waiting. Just you, and the standard you hold yourself to in private. Most people perform well when someone else is watching. Give them pressure, give them consequences, give them supervision, and they will deliver. But remove the external pressure, and something changes. The standard quietly drops. The excuses begin to sound reasonable. I'll catch up tomorrow. One day won't matter. I deserve a break. And here is the dangerous part. Those excuses sound logical. They sound harmless. But one skipped day repeated again and again becomes a lost year. Because one day alone does not change your life, but one day repeated 200 times absolutely does. Imagine choosing progress just one extra time each day. One extra chapter. One extra workout. One extra skill practiced. Over time, that does not just improve your life, it transforms who you are. Behavioral scientists have studied this deeply, and they found something powerful called implementation intention. It sounds technical, but the idea is simple. Instead of saying, "I will work on my goals," you decide exactly when, where, and how you will do it. Not someday. Not when you feel motivated, but specifically, at this time, in this place, doing this action. Studies show that people who use this method follow through far more consistently than those who rely on motivation alone. Not because they are naturally more disciplined, but because they remove the need to decide every day. They built systems. And systems make discipline easier. Let me share a story that stays with me because it captures this perfectly. There was a man, we'll call him James, who was told in his 20s that his learning disability meant certain careers would always be out of reach. Most people would have accepted that sentence as permanent. But James did something different. He took a job as a janitor at a university. Every night after finishing his shift, when the hallways were empty and the lights were dim, he stayed an extra hour. Not because anyone told him to. Not because someone promised him success. But because he refused to accept limitation as destiny. He picked up discarded textbooks left behind by students. At first, he read 5 pages a night, then 10, then entire chapters. No teacher graded him. No boss monitored him. No audience applauded him. For years later, that same man earned 2 professional certifications and eventually ran a training program helping adults with learning challenges build skills for better careers. His story was not about natural talent. It was about what he chose to do in the invisible hours, the hours nobody posts online, the hours nobody celebrates, the hours that quietly build strength. Those invisible hours are where real separation happens. Not in public victories, but in private effort. And the powerful part is this: those hours are available to everyone. Every single person watching this has access to invisible hours. The difference is how you use them. On Stoicism Breath, this leads us to the next principle: winning in silence. Because there is a hidden danger that catches ambitious people, especially the intelligent ones. The moment you discover a meaningful goal, something exciting, something real, there is a strong urge to talk about it, to share it, to announce it, to tell the world who you are becoming. And that impulse feels healthy. It feels like commitment. It feels like ownership. It feels like stepping into your future. But science shows something surprising happens when you announce your goals too early. Psychologist Peter Gollwitzer at NYU studied this pattern for years. What he found was unexpected. When people share their goals publicly and receive praise or recognition, the brain releases a small reward signal, the same kind of signal that normally follows actual achievement. But here is the problem. That reward arrives before the work is done. And once the brain feels rewarded, the urgency to act quietly decreases. In other words, talking about the goal can trick your brain into feeling like progress has already happened, even when nothing has been built yet. And that early satisfaction slowly weakens your drive. Not because you are lazy, not because you lack discipline, but because your brain received applause before it earned results. That is why winning in silence is so powerful. It protects your focus. It keeps your hunger alive. It allows your actions, not your words, to carry the weight of your ambition. Here is the strange truth most people never realize. The moment you announce your goal to the world, your brain begins to feel like you have already taken a step forward, even if you have not moved at all. Researchers discovered something that sounds almost unfair. When you publicly declare your plans and receive encouragement, praise, or even simple recognition, your brain releases a small reward signal. Not because the work is finished, but because the social approval that normally follows success has arrived too early. And that early reward creates a dangerous illusion. You feel progress without doing the work that creates progress. You feel movement without actually moving. It is like standing at the starting line, hearing applause, and thinking the race has already begun. But nothing has happened yet. The body has not moved. The effort has not been applied. The discipline has not been tested. And here is the important part. This is not a character flaw. It is not laziness. It is not weakness. It is biology. Your brain is wired to seek approval and recognition because, for thousands of years, approval meant survival. But in today's world, that same wiring can trick you into celebrating too early. It optimizes for praise instead of progress. And the cost of that mistake is subtle. So subtle that most people never connect the moment they announce their dream to the slow loss of urgency that followed. Now, this does not mean you must hide every ambition forever. Silence does not mean isolation. There is a powerful difference between sharing your goals for accountability and sharing them for applause. Real accountability looks like choosing one or two people who will ask you hard questions. People who will not simply cheer for you, but challenge you. People who will check your progress, hold you responsible, and remind you of your commitment when your motivation fades. That kind of sharing creates pressure, the kind of pressure that sharpens you. But sharing your dream with an audience that applauds you before the work begins creates something very different. It creates comfort. It creates the illusion of movement. It creates the feeling of being productive without actually building anything. One path builds strength. The other builds false confidence. If you study the people who truly changed their lives, the ones who showed up in rooms nobody expected them to enter, you will notice something consistent. They did not make loud announcements along the way. They did not narrate every step of their journey. They built quietly. They moved in silence. They improved behind the scenes. And when they finally arrived, they did not need to explain themselves. The results spoke clearly enough. There is something powerful about walking into a room with results instead of promises. Words can be debated. Plans can be doubted. But results stand on their own. They cannot be argued with. No one prepares defenses against outcomes that already exist. When your work becomes visible, it does not need translation. It speaks a language everyone understands. That is why protecting the energy of what you are building is essential. Not every dream needs an audience while it is still fragile. Some ideas grow best in private, where they are not exposed to doubt, pressure, or premature celebration. Think of your goals like seeds planted beneath the soil. If you keep digging them up to show everyone that they exist, they never get the chance to grow roots. So if you feel that urge to announce every plan, pause for a moment. Ask yourself a simple question: am I sharing this to build accountability, or am I sharing this to feel temporary validation? Because the answer to that question often determines whether the dream survives or fades. And this brings us to the next principle, the long game. The one principle that holds everything else together. Patience, not as weakness, but as a weapon. Leo Tolstoy once wrote that the two most powerful warriors are patience and time. Not speed, not talent, not luck. Patience and time. Everything we have talked about, being underestimated, redirecting your attention, outgrowing old environments, working in invisible hours, building without announcement, none of it works without patience. Not passive patience, the kind where you sit and wait for life to change, but active patience, the kind where you keep showing up even when the results are invisible. And this is where modern life has made things harder than ever. Because every day, we are surrounded by stories of instant success. Someone launches a business and makes 6 figures in 30 days. Someone posts content online and reaches 100,000 followers in 6 months. Someone quits their job and suddenly appears to be living their dream life within a year. These stories are real, but they are rare. They represent a tiny fraction of people who tried. Yet algorithms push these stories to the front of our screens because they capture attention. They generate clicks. They spark curiosity. And after seeing enough of these stories, something dangerous happens to your expectations. Your brain quietly resets its definition of normal. So when your own progress takes longer than a few months, when your own results do not match the highlight reels, you begin to believe something is wrong. Not with the timeline, but with yourself. And that misinterpretation becomes expensive. Because instead of staying patient, instead of trusting the process, many people abandon their efforts just before the results begin to form. But the truth is this: real progress rarely looks exciting while it is happening. Most of the time, it looks slow. It looks repetitive. It looks invisible. And that is exactly why patience is not weakness. It is strength disguised as stillness. There is a dangerous moment that happens in many people's lives, and most don't even realize it. After months of effort with little visible progress, a quiet voice appears in the mind. It whispers, "Maybe something is wrong with you." Not with the process, not with the timeline, but with you. And that misunderstanding is incredibly expensive because it convinces people to stop just before progress begins to show. James Clear described this perfectly with what he called the plateau of latent potential. Imagine a block of ice sitting in a cold room. The temperature slowly rises from 25 degrees to 26, then 27, then 28, all the way to 31 degrees. During that entire time, nothing looks different. The ice remains solid. No cracks. No melting. No visible progress. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. But the moment the temperature reaches 32 degrees, everything changes. The ice melts. Suddenly. Instantly. To the observer, it looks like magic. Like a sudden breakthrough. But the truth is, the breakthrough did not happen at 32 degrees alone. It was built by every single degree that came before it. Most people quit at 31 degrees. Not because they lack ability. Not because they lack intelligence. But because they run out of patience before they run out of potential. They abandon the process at the exact moment when progress is closest to appearing. On Stoicism Breath, this is one of the most important ideas you can carry with you. Progress is often invisible before it becomes undeniable. But the long game asks something even harder than effort. It asks you to separate your self-worth from your results. That is not easy in a world obsessed with numbers, likes, followers, income, recognition. It is easy to feel valuable when things are going well. It is easy to feel confident when results are obvious. But what about the days when nothing seems to move? What about the weeks when your effort produces no visible reward? If your confidence rises and falls with every small outcome, the long game will slowly drain your spirit, not because you are failing, but because you are measuring yourself using tools that were never designed to measure slow growth. Some days, the only proof you have is that you showed up. You woke up. You tried again. You stayed consistent when it would have been easier to quit. And on those days, showing up has to be enough. Not forever, but for today and tomorrow. And the long stretch of days where the outside world offers no confirmation for what you internally believe is possible. The person who can continue without applause, without validation, without visible reward, that person is building something deeper than skill. They are building character. And character is the foundation that supports every achievement once success finally arrives. Skills can open doors. Talent can create opportunities. But character is what allows you to stay inside those rooms once you enter. If you are committed to the long game, no matter how long it takes, then understand this: the journey itself is shaping who you are becoming. Every repetition strengthens discipline. Every delay strengthens patience. Every quiet effort strengthens identity. The long game does not just build results. It builds resilience. And something else has shifted by the time you reach this point. Not because of the words you heard, but because you stayed. You did not skip ahead. You did not scroll past. You allowed yourself to sit with uncomfortable truths about growth, truths that many people avoid because they are difficult to accept. In a world that rewards noise, shortcuts, and appearances, choosing depth, patience, and discipline is becoming rare. Look around at the world today. It is louder than it has ever been. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone has a platform. Everyone is performing some version of their life for an audience. Social media feeds are filled with announcements, highlights, and carefully crafted success stories. But in the middle of all the noise, the rarest person, the truly rare person, is not the loudest voice. It is the quiet builder. The person who is patient. The person who works without constant validation. The person who shows up daily without announcing every step. That person is not behind. They are not invisible. They are not losing. They are compounding. And compounding is one of the most powerful forces in life. For a long time, it looks like nothing is happening. Days pass. Weeks pass. Months pass. Effort continues, but visible change remains small. Then suddenly, everything shifts. Progress becomes obvious. Results become undeniable. And the people who once doubted you do not receive a warning. They do not get time to prepare explanations. They simply look up one day and notice that the scoreboard has changed. No arguments. No defense. No speeches. Just results, standing there, clear and undeniable. That is the moment you are building toward. Not the moment where you prove others wrong, but the moment where your effort becomes too visible to ignore. So do the work today. Not for applause. Not to impress anyone. Not to perform for an audience. Do it because the person you are becoming requires it. Do it because every quiet hour you invest adds another degree to the ice. Do it because 32 degrees is coming, and when it arrives, you will not be the one who quit at 31. If these ideas resonate somewhere deep inside you, remember this: you are not alone in this process. There are others walking the same path, building quietly, growing steadily, choosing patience over noise. This is what Stoicism Breath stands for. A place for people doing the real work, the unglamorous work, the work nobody sees. And if this journey feels familiar to you, carry these words forward as your own quiet commitment. I ignore. I outgrow. I outwork. I win in silence.